Week 4 is in the books, and now we're on to week 5. Typically, at this point, you'd like to have at least your final fantasy roster assembled, or at least quality starters. But bye weeks, they're coming in droves. This week, we got the Dolphins and the Lions. I know we're gonna be missing a lot of our quality Dolphin starters, so we might need to replace them this week. So let's go ahead and let's talk about some potential waiver targets, because where else are we going to get them? The waiver wire. But before that, what's crack-a-lack? It's your boy Broshmo, just in case you did not know. So go ahead and give me a thumbs up, only if you enjoy the content. And go ahead and become a bro and subscribe. It's much appreciated, much obliged. If you're into the NFL draft, I got a 2027 round mock draft coming out in a couple of weeks. So if you really love that, then shoot, be around for it. It's gonna be it's been a doozy to put together. So without further ado, let's get into our waiver wire targets, and we're gonna start at quarterback. And I know I just said Detroit's on a bye, but Matthew Stafford has been a monster. He's available in 44% of leagues. This Lions team honestly is a lot better than I thought they would be this year, and he's a big reason why. Matthew Stafford is just, he could be a quality starter for your fantasy team, or if you're in super flex, if you're unsure about your quarterback, or you want another quarterback that you could kind of like basically pick whichever has the favorable matchup, you throw it in as a starter. The thing about Stafford is, between weeks 13 and 15, typically when your fantasy football playoffs will probably happen, he's got some tough matchups. I know he's got the Bears and he's got the Vikings, but in week 12 he's got a very juicy, watering game against the Redskins, and you know everyone puts up points against the Redskins, especially quarterbacks. Let's move on to Jacoby Brissett, because he has played phenomenal this year. He only has 2 picks on the season, 10 touchdowns. He's scored at least 2 touchdowns in every game this year. He's got a good matchup this week against Kansas City, and you know it's gonna be a shootout. Hopefully he gets T.Y. Hilton back this week. That's been one of his primary targets, almost his only primary target. So another guy maybe to keep your eye out for. There we go. Our word's so difficult. Jameis Winston. I don't like saying it. I don't trust Jameis Winston. No, I actually really do like saying that, because he's been a roller coaster that at its climax, man, beautiful, great. At its lowest point, oh my gosh, dude, Jameis Winston, downright terrible. We saw it week 1 against the 49ers, but it looks like he's putting it all together in this Bruce Arians system. I didn't expect him to go out and do what he did to the Rams. And he's got the Saints this week, who they haven't been great against opposing quarterbacks. They've been downright awful, but they might be putting it all together the way they played Dak. But it is a favorable matchup statistic wise. So if you need a starter this week, Winston's not a bad option. Then I want to talk about the man, the myth, the legend, Gardner Minshew. The dude is balling out in half PPR leagues. He put up 19 points this week against a Denver defense that ranks 6th best against opposing quarterbacks. The guy is good. His touchdown to interception ratio, 7-1. And again, he's got a tough matchup this week against Carolina, but he's scored at least 19 or more points in every game this season. Tough matchup this week against Carolina, but look at his 4 games after that. You got New Orleans, who statistically they are last against opposing quarterbacks, granted what they did to Dak last night. And then you got, or not last night, but Sunday night, you got Cincinnati, you got the Jets, and you got the Texans. That's a good slate of games, especially if you're kind of streaming quarterbacks, or maybe something happened to your starters. He's not a bad option. I love me some Gardner Minshew. I love me Uncle Rico, man. Let's talk about running backs. Ronald Jones II finally looks like he might be given a much heftier workload there in Tampa. I hate to say it, man. Running back at this point of the year, it's really tough to find quality starters there for you at running back. For me, Ronald Jones, I like him better as depth rather than putting him maybe in the flex. But he finally saw more snaps and more carries than Peyton Barber. He was way more productive than Peyton Barber. I'm just saying there's some upsides there to Jones. Let's talk about Darrell Williams, and this is all depends really what happens to Damian Williams there in Kansas City. He's been week to week with a knee injury, I believe, so we don't know when he's going to come back. It could be this week. They put no timetable on it, but Darrell Williams has been really good in the passing game. He's been so-so in the run game, but they've been giving him carries in the red zone. I mean, pounded out 2 touchdowns while averaging almost less than 2 yards per carry. So really, it depends. I would even keep Darrell Williams when Damian Williams is finally scheduled to return. I would keep Darrell Williams on my bench just to see if they do give Damian back that workload, or maybe they decide to go ahead and keep with Darrell. I don't know. We don't know until see it, but he is a good target on that waiver wire. Let's go ahead. Let's talk about Jordan Wilkins, because this is all dependent on if Marlon Mack is hurt or not. Will he miss time or not? They got a very plus matchup against Kansas City, who are 26 against opposing running backs, or I believe they're 26. I know they've given up 26 points on average to opposing running backs, and this guy is going to be the guy on the ground. He will see a little bit in the pass game, but that's more Nyheim Hines' strong suit. This guy will definitely be who they give a majority of the bulk to on the ground. So that's a good matchup there. And I mean, I'm just saying. This one, no one's going to like. I don't really like it myself. But like I said, when this deep into the season, it's hard to find quality starters. And there is a bit of upside to Mark Walton from Miami. I know Miami, it puts a bad taste in my mouth. But he saw more usage this week than Kalen Ballage. Kenyon Drake has been on the trade-in block for who knows how long. So if they ever do trade away Kenyon Drake, Mark Walton might be the starter there. I mean, just look at the usage this past game against the Chargers. Drake had 14 opportunities on touches. Walton had 8. Ballage had 3. I mean, this is not a bad guy to stash. Feel free to drop whenever. I mean, he's owned in almost no leagues. So if you're in very deep leagues, might be a name to consider. Guy I just added to because, wow, I was watching this game, and Jalen Samuels, only owned in 19% of leagues. He went off against the Bengals. Granted, it was the Bengals, but what it was, his workload, it was literally split down the middle between him and James Conner. If you're a Conner owner, you're a little worried. You're a little hot and bothered because now he's splitting time with Jalen Samuels. Samuels had 21 touches. 3 of those touches were passes, which he completed. It was ridiculous. We knew he was a big playmaker in the passing game, or essentially the passing game as a receiver, not as a passer. But he only saw, I believe, 1 less carry than James Conner. So that's a hot name. Honestly, probably be my number 1 name to pick up going forward. Let's go ahead. Let's take a look at receivers. Mohamed Sanu. He is probably the number 3, but he's the number 2 receiver right now in Atlanta. It's not Calvin Ridley. Ridley is not taking that second-year leap like we thought he would. It's kind of bothering. Like, take a look at this, because Sanu, he has wide receiver 2 upside, and I think his floor is basically a wide receiver 3, low-end wide receiver 3. But he has 8 more touches and catches than Calvin Ridley. If you have Ridley, I would pick up Sanu. And I'd be tempted to, I would probably start Sanu in lieu of Calvin Ridley. I'm just saying. Geronimo Allison. This is all dependent on if Devontae Adams, how bad is that turf toe? They said it wasn't serious. They say he's day-to-day. But if he doesn't play this week, Allison, I like his chances. I think he's right now, I think he's gonna outproduce MVS this week. I mean, just looking at like their production, you had Geronimo. He had 4 targets compared to the 7 targets MVS. But what did he do with those targets? 3 catches, 52 yards, and a touchdown. And VS, 3 catches, 47 yards, no touchdowns. They face Dallas this week in a tough matchup. It's a tough secondary. But honestly, I like Geronimo better in this game than MVS. And I want to talk about my PPR legend here. Cole Beasley, baby. I talked about him. I feel like I've talked about him a lot recently because he is a PPR machine. The dude gets catches. He sees targets. He has more catches on the year and more targets on the year than John Brown. John Brown just gets in the end zone. John Brown is a deep threat. That's not Beasley. Beasley's up the middle. He's over the middle. And Josh Allen's looking for him. He's looking for him. He's going to him. So if you're in a PPR league, I highly suggest picking up Cole Beasley. He is a solid target. He's a solid receiver. He's a flex. And like I said, PPR, man. PPR machine. These other 2 guys are kind of, if you're desperate. Not if you're desperate. But if you are hurting at the receiver position, these guys have really good upside. Kenny Stills, he's a better big play threat than Will Fuller there. The only question is he hurt his hammy this week, so we don't know. Depending on the injury, he is either a do or do not pick up there. AJ Brown, man, the guy, he just doesn't see targets. He's a big hit or miss. I mean, this past week he only had 3 catches. 2 of them went for touchdowns. In week 1, I believe he only had 3 catches for 100 yards. But those other 2 games in between, they weren't that great. I don't trust Marcus Mariota. I wouldn't pick up AJ Brown, but if you're desperate or if you're really in need of a receiver or in your very deep leagues, he's not a bad pickup. He's not a bad wait and see, but he is super reliant on the big play. And a guy I didn't list here because this was happening during the Monday night game, Deontay Johnson, man, he looks like the favorite target there for Mason Rudolph. The guy is going off. He had what was it? He had 6. Was it 6? Yeah, 6 targets, 6 catches for 77 yards and a touchdown. Can't even read my own handwriting. He out-targeted Juju, man. What? That's wild. It's crazy. Mason Rudolph dropped a dime to him there for the touchdown, but I think that's wild. He's owned in 6% of leagues. He would be right after Mohamed Sanu, he would be my number 2 target if you're looking for a wide receiver. And let's go ahead. Let's talk about tight ends because, boy, man, tight ends. If you're streaming tight ends, you got a tough job. You gotta be on top of everything. So I'm here to help with that. I got some names you can consider. Chris Herndon, he comes back from suspension. He's owned in, he's only owned in 8% of leagues. Just looking at his stats last year, he had over 500 yards receiving, 4 touchdowns. I think it's a guy worth taking a shot on. He has a rapport with Sam Darnold, so not a bad guy to target. Ricky Seals-Jones, man, we were talking about this guy being a potential sleeper in Arizona years ago. Never happened, but he's doing it right now there in Cleveland. He decided to give him the workload there at tight end, and he came through. Let's keep in mind here, Njoku is out till week 12. Dude, this guy ain't a bad target to have. I mean, we also have Landry out with a concussion, potentially out. We don't know. Keep an eye on that. But this offense suddenly turns. It's going to be run heavy, and who's going to be seeing targets? Odell and the tight end, dude. I like the upside of Ricky Seals-Jones, but I feel like we've been saying that for years now. Jimmy Graham, this is another one that's dependent, I think, on Devontae Adams. Does he play? Does he not? The guy's a red zone. He's a red zone target. We knew that. He came out. He produced extremely well this past week. But what did he do the prior 2 weeks? He had big fat donuts. He had nothing. He didn't score anything after his 3 receptions for 15 yards and a touchdown in week 1. I don't trust Jimmy Graham, but if Devontae Adams is really going to be out this week, I don't think he is a bad target. Now I got Dawson Knox, man. The guy, I know he only has 6 receptions in these last 2 games, but they're looking for him. This is kind of dependent on what happens with Tyler Kroft whenever he comes back. So I would keep an eye on that. I won't start Knox the week Kroft is back just to see who is the starter there. But the guy is producing. He faces this week Tennessee, and you're like, oh man, Tennessee's a really good defense. They're 26th against opposing tight ends. I know that's a mind-blowing number, but they give up points to tight ends, so maybe not a bad grab this week. And then I got Jack Doyle. Is Hilton out? If he is, Jack Doyle is a good pickup. I mean, it sucks that kind of like there's 2 very viable tight ends in this offense, and it's kind of like put them together, you have a tight end 1, but they kind of split it. It's kind of split between them. So, I mean, I go Doyle over Ebron because he sees more targets. He saw 8 this week with Hilton out. He had a touchdown. He only had 22 yards, but they faced Kansas City, who I was just talking about Tennessee. They're 26 against opposing tight ends. Kansas City's 27th. So it's a good matchup. And man, if you're streaming tight ends or you really need a tight end, you gotta reach for one. You gotta just take a leap of faith. That's it for the video. Hopefully it was informative. I was able to help you out with some tough decisions. I mean, let's see if we can keep your team from imploding. Right now, I'm at 2-2, and it feels like every game matters because you know what? It does. So, hopefully I was able to help you out. But until next time, you be easy, my friends. Later.